Okay. We've been teaching through the book of James.
Proučavali smo Jakovu poslanicu.
So we're going to be in James chapter 3.
I nastavljamo u Jakovoj poslanici 3. poglavlje.
But this section reminds me of a true story from history.
Ovaj dio koji ćemo danas čitati podsjeća me na jedan povijesni događaj, istiniti.
And that is when the Brethren denomination was founded in the 19th century.
I crkva braće, denominacija koja je osnovana u 19. stoljeću.
It grew a lot around the world.
Rasla je veoma puno diljem čitavog svijeta.
And actually, it is one of the most influential denominations in the last 200 years.
To je jedna od, ajmo reći, najutjecajnijih denominacija u zadnjih 200 godina.
But if you're interested into why, we can talk afterwards. But other people don't realize that a lot of the things that have happened in churches have come from the Brethren.
Ako vas to zanima, možemo kasnije razgovarati o tom, ali puno stvari koje se dogodile u crkvi u biti potječu od te denominacije braće.
Yes. However, there was one teacher who was very influential in this denomination.
Kako god, postao jedan učitelj koji je bio jako utjecajan u toj denominaciji.
And I guess I'll say his name because he's with the Lord. Named Darby.
I on se zove Darby, on je sad sa Gospodom.
And this is a public historical event, so I don't normally talk about people in a gossipy way.
Ovo je jedan povijesni događaj, ja inače ne pričam o ljudima na jedan ovakav način.
But this is over 150 years ago.
Ali ovo je bilo prije 150 godina.
And he had been very influential in the Brethren denomination.
Bio je jako utjecajan u toj denominaciji bratstva.
And they had a church that was their main church, the central church.
Imali su jednu crkvu koja je bila njihova glavna, centralna crkva.
And he was the leader there.
I on je bio tamo lider.
Well, then he went away on a world teaching tour that lasted a year.
I onda je išao na jednu, ajmo reći kao oko svijeta, jednu turu gdje je išao poučavati.
And he came back and he found that while he was gone, another man became very influential in the church.
I dok ga nije bilo tu, kad se vratio, našao je jednog čovjeka koji je isto tako bio jako utjecan u toj crkvi.
And slowly, as he listened to this other man's teaching, Darby didn't really like everything he had to say.
I kako je slušao ta druga učenja od drugih ljudi, Darbiju nije baš se svidjelo da to što su oni imali za reći.
And so they started arguing with each other.
I onda su naravno počeli su raspravljati u mišljenjima jedni sa drugima.
And it got harder, harsher and harsher.
I postalo je sve tvrđe i tvrđe između njih.
And finally, the church split.
I konačno crkva se podijelila.
And they kept arguing with each other by letter.
I oni su se nastavljali raspravljati jedni između drugih putem pisama.
And this split went through and it affected every Brethren church in the world.
I ta podjela je imala utjecaja na sve bratske crkve u cijelom svijetu.
And to this day, there are two branches of the Brethren church.
I do danas postoje te, ajmo reći, dvije denominacije bratske crkve.
And both of them, each of them is lacking something that the other church has.
I svakoj od tih crkava nedostaje nešto što ova druga crkva ima.
Both of them lost something when they split.
Obje te denominacije su izgubile nešto kada su se razdijelile.
And I've read some of the correspondence between these two men.
Ja sam čitao dio tih nekih rasprava između te dvojice ljudi.
But, and I can see why each man was arguing for his doctrine and what he was saying.
I mogao sam vidjeti zašto se svaki od njih raspravljao u vezi te svoje doktrine i toga što je on imao za reći.
But the thing that strikes you is that neither one of them was willing to yield.
Ali stvar koja te najviše pogodi je ta da nijedan od njih se nije htio poniziti.
Now there was a third man involved, another leader from another church.
I bio je tu jedan treći čovjek koji je bio isto tako umiješan, lider jedne treće crkve.
And he would, when he tried to intervene, he would say, "Can't we just love each other in the name of Christ?"
I on se pokušao miješati i kada je intervenirao, on je samo rekao, zar ne možemo voljeti jedni druge ljubavlju Kristovu?
If this brother is acceptable to Christ, and this brother is acceptable to Christ, why is he not acceptable to me?
Ako je ovaj brat prihvaćen od strane Krista i ovaj drugi brat isto tako prihvaćen od strane Krista, zašto ga ja ne mogu prihvatiti?
And they both got mad at this man who tried to make peace.
I onda su obojica tih lidera bili ljuti na tog trećeg koji je htio uspostaviti mir između njih.
Because of course he's not on my side.
Jer naravno, taj treći nije na mojoj strani.
So he's wrong.
Znači da je on u krivu.
Now towards the end of his life, Darby did say that he was wrong about that.
I do kraja svog života Darby ipak rekao da je on bio u krivu zarad te stvari.
So the Lord did continue to work on his life.
Bog je i dalje nastavio raditi u njegovom životu.
But that brings us to this section we're going to read, chapter 3, 13 to 18.
I to nas dovodi sad do ovog dijela koji ćemo ovdje čitati u trećem poglavlju od 13 do 18.
Now the beginning of this chapter, he says, let not many of you be teachers.
Na početku ovog poglavlja on kaže, nemojte mnogi od vas biti učitelji.
Which implies that the people he's writing to, that there's a lot of people who want to be teaching other people.
Što nas dovodi do toga da ljudi kojima je on ovo pisao su htjeli poučavati druge ljudi, imali su tu želju, težnju da poučavaju druge.
And the next section that I preached on last time was about the tongue.
I onda sljedeći dio koji sam propovedao zadnji put ovdje radi se o jeziku.
So as these teachers argue with each other, he's saying, you watch what you say.
I kako su ti učitelji, samozvani, raspravljali jedni sa drugima, on ih upozorio, pazite što govorite.
But now this section we're going to see, he's saying, you need to, really the measure of who is wise and understanding is shown in what you do.
I onda ovdje u ovom dijelu kaže, trebate imati mjeru koja je među vama mudar i razuman, će se pokazati po tome šta on u biti čini, šta radi.
Okay, so, could you read 13 to 18, yes. But nice and slow.
13 do 18 ćemo čitati.
Koje poglavlje?
Treće. Tko je mudar i razborit među vama? Neka dobrim življenjem pokaže svoja djela o mudroj blagosti. Ako imate gorku zavist i svadljivost u srcu svojemu, ne uznosite se i ne lažite protiv istine. Nije to mudrost koja odozgo silazi, nego zemaljska, naravna i zloduška. Jer gdje je zavist i svadljivost, ondje je nered i svako zlo djelo. A mudrost odozgo je ponajprije čista, zatim mironosna, pravična, pokorna, puna milosrđa i dobrih plodova, nepristrana i neprijetvorna. Plod se pak pravednosti u miru sije onima koji tvore mir.
Yeah, so we see that it's not just what we say that reveals what's in our heart, it's what we do.
Ovdje vidimo da nije samo ono što mi kažemo otkriva ono što je u našem srcu, već i ono što mi činimo.
And it's interesting, James is the most practical book in the Bible, in the New Testament.
I zanimljivo je da je Jakovljeva poslanica najpraktičnija knjiga Novog Zavjeta.
I mean, it's very focused on what you do outwardly.
Jako je usredotočena na ono šta ti radiš svakodnevno.
In daily life.
U tvom svakodnevnom životu.
He doesn't spend a lot of time talking about theology.
Ne provodi puno vremena ovdje pričajući nam o teologiji.
But when you actually really study what he's saying, he's really talking about the heart throughout the whole book.
Ali kad gledamo šta on u biti govori, vidimo da priča o čovjekovom srcu kroz cijelu njegovu poslanicu.
Because our life flows out of our heart.
Jer naš život izlazi iz našeg srca.
And he knows that teachers can be jealous of each other.
I on zna da učitelji mogu biti ljubomorni jedni na druge.
And one way that I have seen this play out in churches
I na jedan način koji sam ja vidio to što se dešava u crkvi
is not from, there are people who don't think I am being a teacher.
Ima ljudi koji misle ja nisam učitelj.
But they really love some other teacher.
Ali oni vole nekog drugog učitelja.
And they're always pushing off this teacher on other people.
I oni onda tog učitelja nekako stavljaju ispred drugih učitelja.
And they'll criticize the pastor because he talked about this subject and Derek Prince says something great about it and he didn't say anything like that.
I Možda će kritizirati svog pastora u crkvi zato što on je pričao o nekoj temi i on govori stvari koje taj drugi učitelj kaže, a te stvari su jako bitne za tu temu.
Yeah, and I said Derek Prince. I think that I've read some very good Derek Prince. There's nothing against Derek.
I kaže da je čitao Dereka Princa i kaže da je on okej.
It's that we can become a focus and be pushing off our guy and other people.
Ali možemo raditi to, izgubiti fokus i na druge ljude odgurivati radi tih nekih učitelja koje čitamo i slušamo.
Yeah. Now, and in our circles, our churches in Croatia.
I ovdje u našim krugovima, u crkvama u širem Hrvatske.
I would say the biggest point where you see teaching coming into conflict with each other.
I dosta gdje možemo vidjeti da se učitelji konfrontiraju jedni drugim.
Is teaching that emphasizes studying and understanding the scriptures.
Ima ljudi koji uveličavaju značenje proučavanja i razumijevanja Biblije.
So focusing on the written word of God.
I fokusirani su na pisanu riječ Božju.
Versus teaching that focuses on being connected to the Holy Spirit and the immediate action of God right now.
I oni koji su uče o povezanosti sa Duhom Svetim i djelovanja Božjeg odmah i sada,
And you can have situations where people say you aren't focused on the Bible enough, and so they become even more extreme.
I onda imaš ljude koji kažu ti nisi dovoljno fokusiran na Božju riječ i onda postaje još ekstremniji.
And other people will say you just quote the Bible and follow it like a rule book, and you don't have a connection to the living God.
I drugi kažu ti samo citiraš Bibliju i kao koristiš je kao neki pravilo života, a nemaš povezano sa Duhom Svetim.
So they then spend less time in the Word.
Oni provode manje vremena u Božoj riječi.
Now, both of those perspectives are wrong about the other person.
I obe te strane su u krivu u odnosu na ovu drugu stranu.
And you really have to have both.
I trebaš imati obe strane.
You really have to have a balance between both.
I trebaš imati balans, ravnotežu između obe strane.
And everybody is probably going to be in a position where they need to grow a little bit towards the other side.
I svi će u jednom momentu biti u situaciji kad će morati malo preći na ovu drugu stranu.
Now I'm not going to talk about that anymore.
I ne želim više o tome pričati.
I'm just saying that is where in Croatia I see conflict coming up that doesn't need to be.
I to je ono što ja vidim da u Hrvatskoj postoji konflikt među biblijskim učiteljima, ali ga ne bi trebalo to biti.
Because you have situations where both people are right.
Jer imaš situacije gdje su jedna i druga strana u pravu.
And you see if you read the New Testament epistles,
i ako čitaš poslanice novozavjetne,
you see that Paul, Peter, John, and the author of Hebrews,
vidiš da Petar, Ivan, Pavle i autor Hebreja,
all emphasize different things.
Svi oni naglašavaju različite stvari.
We don't notice how different what they're saying is.
Mi ne znamo koliko je to različito to što oni govore.
Because the core of what they're saying is the same.
Jer srž onoga što oni govore je ista.
But if you pay attention to what each of them is not talking about,
ali ako obratite pažnju na ono što niko od njih ne govori,
you'll see that they are all not mentioning something that the other teachers consider to be absolutely central.
Već da niko od njih ne spominje ono što drugi učitelj smatra da je jako bitno.
And guess what? They all got along.
I oni se svi slažu.
They were all fine with each other.
Svi su bili dobri jedni između drugih.
They understood that God has lots of things to say.
Oni su razumjeli da Bog ima puno stvari za reći.
More than one teacher can say.
Više nego što jedan bilo koji učitelj može reći.
The thing is though, this isn't just about teaching.
I stvar je ovdje da nije samo stvar u učenju.
For most of us, it has to do with regular daily life.
Za mnogi od nas to ima veze sa svakodnevnim življenjem.
First thing, who is wise and understanding?
Prva stvar koju kaže, ko je mudar i razborit među vama?
How does it show itself?
Kako će se on pokazati?
Through gentle deeds, the gentleness of wisdom.
Dobrim življenjem i svojim djelima u mudroj blagosti će to pokazati.
The wisdom that's from above, it says in 17 and 18, is gentle and reasonable and merciful.
Kaže u 17. i 18. da je mudrost odozgo čista, mironosna, pravična.
But then, in verse 14, we see if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition,
ali vidimo u 14. stihu da kaže ako imate gorku zavist i svadljivost ili sebičnu ambiciju, on je rekao.
It lends itself to being arrogant.
I vodi vas u jednu vrstu arogancije.
So what this means is if you find yourself being divisive or to looking down on other people,
ako vidite da vi gledate sa visine na druge ljude oko vas,
it doesn't mean that your perspective is wrong.
Ne znači da je vaša perspektiva možda pogrešna.
It does mean that we need to look at ourselves because it's a sign that there is some kind of self, there's something wrong in our heart.
Ali to znači da bi trebali pogledati unutar sebe jer definitivno nešto nije u redu sa našim srcem.
I mean, Darby would not bend on his doctrinal stuff.
Darby se ne bi,
he would not change. He would not.
Ne bi promijenio svoju doktrinu.
He would not accept the other guy.
Ili ne bi prihvatio doktrinu od nekog drugog.
He would not stay in the same church.
Ne bi ostao sa njim u istoj crkvi.
Now and this is something all of us have to look at.
I to je nešto što svako od nas mora pogledati.
I mean, this summer I recognize there are certain kinds of people that I really have some wrong attitudes in my heart towards.
Ovog ljeta sam vidio da je bilo određenih ljudi kojima sam ja stvarno imao jedan krivi stav u svom srcu prema njima.
I mean, honestly, I recognize that I actually have violent thoughts.
Iskreno, vidio sam da u svom srcu sam imao nasilne misli prema tim ljudima.
I mean, seriously, I have thought of doing violence.
Čak sam u jednom momentu pomislio da učinim nešto nasilno prema tim ljudima.
This may be normal.
I onda sam pomislio, čekaj, je li ovo normalno?
But it's not okay.
To nije u redu.
It's not the heart of Christ.
To nije Kristovo srce.
So I am now, I can't say it's a finished thing. I'm submitting that to the Lord.
I ne mogu reći da je to sad završena stvar, ali to sam predao Gospodu.
So here's the problem is that because it says, if our behavior comes from the heart,
ako naše ponašanje dolazi iz našeg srca,
then we can be stuck in a trap.
Možemo biti uhvaćeni u jednu zamku.
Because we're not supposed to be hypocrites, right?
Jer ne bi trebali biti licemjeri.
So does that mean that I'm supposed to act out of what I see in my heart?
Znači, da li to znači da ja treba da se ponašam onako kao što vidim da je stanje moga srca?
Is it okay to pretend to be different?
Da li je okej da se pretvaraš da si drugčiji?
And I would say yes, it is.
Ja bih rekao da.
Because when we're in a situation
jer kad se nalazimo u određenoj situaciji
that demands a response from us,
kad se zahtjeva neki odgovor od nas,
we have a range of possible responses to that.
Mi imamo, ajmo reći, spektar mogućih odgovora za to, za tu situaciju.
There's the theoretical range,
postoji, tajmo reći, taj teoretski
which
raspon.
is you can just forgive the person immediately and hug them.
Gdje ti možeš u jednom momentu oprostiti toj osobi i odmah zagrliti.
That's only theoretical though, right?
Ali to je samo teoretski.
That's over here.
To je ovdje, ajmo reći, na ovoj strani.
Then there's the theoretical. Sorry. There's then there's the real reaction that you can do.
I onda postoji, sudi se na onu pravu reakciju koju možemo u tom momentu napraviti.
Yeah, because honestly, it would be impossible for almost anybody to forgive that fast and just say, okay, it's all done and forgotten.
Jer iskreno bilo bi gotovo nemoguće za bilo koju osobu da samo tako oprosti i kaže, okay, daj, zagrlit ćete, to je to.
But there is a range of things that you can do.
Ali postoji taj spektar, raspon taj, jel?
Some of them are harsher and harder than others.
Neke su tvrđe i teže od drugih stvari.
And you can choose to go as far in the direction of being forgiving as you are capable of doing.
I ti možeš izabrati u tom rasponu da ideš prema tome kolika je tvoja mogućnost da ti oprostiš u tom trenutku.
And the other thing we can do, which one of my sons reminded me of this last week.
I druga stvar koju možemo napraviti, to je nešto što na što me moj sin podsjetio prošlog tjedna.
He was in a difficult conversation.
Bio u jednom teškom razgovoru.
And he realized I have to say this thing in this conversation.
I on je shvatio da ja moram mu reći tu jednu stvar.
I can't say this thing.
Ali ja ne mogu reći tu stvar.
It's not possible. I do not have the strength to say this thing.
Nemam snage, jednostavno nije bilo moguće da ja kažem tu stvar.
It's like it's outside of the range of what's possible for him.
Kao da je to bilo izvan tog raspona, šta je bilo njemu moguće.
He remembered something C.S. Lewis had written.
I on se sjetio nečega što je C.S. Lewis napisao.
When you're in that situation,
kad se nalaziš u toj situaciji,
you can pretend you have the faith to do it.
Možeš se pretvarati jer nemaš vjeru da to napraviš.
And then say, I'm going to pretend I have enough faith and say.
Ja onda je rekao, ja ću se pretvarati da imam dovoljno vjere za to i ja ću to reći.
And he did it.
I to je i učinio.
Now if that is the only thing, if just pretending is the only thing we do with our heart, that's Phariseeism.
Ako je to što se pretvaramo jedina stvar koju ćemo napraviti u našem srcu, to je onda farizejski.
Because it is, I mean, I wonder, C.S. Lewis was an officer in World War I.
C.S. Lewis je bio oficir u Prvom svjetskom ratu.
And we know about what it was like going up out of the trench into the machine gun fire and that kind of thing.
Izlazio je iz rovova na puškometraljsku vatru i tako dalje, sve te stvari.
It makes me wonder if that was something he did as he led his men over the top in World War I. I'm going to pretend I have the courage to run into machine gun fire.
Pitam se da li je on vodio svoje ljude ili je samo govorio imam ja hrabrosti da izađem na tu.
Which shows that this can be a worldly technique.
I to nam pokazuje da to u biti može biti jedna svjetovna tehnika, to pretvaranje.
But when he writes it as a Christian, it's different.
Ali kada to radimo kao kršćani, onda je to drugčije.
Like when Lewis was very devoted and very dedicated to daily and regular prayer.
Lewis je bio posvećen veoma toj svakodnevnoj molitvi.
And regular giving of his money and his time to people in need.
I svakodnevnom davanju svoga vremena i svog novca onim ljudima koji su bili u potrebi.
And he was very aware of his own heart and he tried to examine himself before the Lord.
I bio jako svjestan stanja svog srca i uvijek ga je htio preispitati ispred Boga.
And he studied the Bible and the scriptures regularly.
I naravno svakodnevno je proučavao Božju riječ, pismo.
So his pretending to have enough faith is part of a whole set of connection to God.
I znači to njegovo pretvaranje da ima dovoljno vjere je bio dio samo tog cijelog njegovog odnosa sa Bogom. And this is just a way to carry the yoke. Jesus says, "Come, put my yoke upon you." Right? I Isus je rekao da trebamo staviti njegov jaram na sebe.
And I've said this before. I always thought that he was the plowman.
Ja sam to rekao, ja sam mislio da je on taj koji nosi taj plug.
And he wants me to be there pulling and him saying, go on, yeah.
I on želeo da ja nosim taj jaram i da me on šiba i govori, ajde.
And a lot of Christian workers, they do their Christian work that way.
I puno kršćanskih radnika radi kršćanski posao baš na takav način.
Which is very sad.
I što je jako tužno.
I've done things that way myself.
Ja sam isto tako radio stvari sam.
But the idea is you have two animals in that yoke.
Ali ideja je da u tom jarmu imaš dvije životinje.
And he's the other one.
I on je ona druga.
He's saying, let's pull together.
I on kaže, uđemo skupa.
And so this is why when you're in the situation, or my son was in that situation, and he had to say something that was too hard.
I zato kad si u nekoj situaciji, kao što je bio moj sin, u toj situaciji gdje je trebao reći nešto što je za njega preteško,
he did it even though it was too hard.
On je to napravio, jako je bilo preteško.
Because Jesus was pulling with him.
Zato jer je Krist vukao sa njim skupa.
And somebody else described that the way it works to have Jesus work through us. I neko je to opisao na takav način da to funkcionira u biti jer Krist radi kroz nas. is that you see a weight you have to lift.
I vidiš teret koji trebaš dići.
And it is, you can't do it.
I ti to ne možeš napraviti.
Okay, I have to lift this car and put it on its side.
Trebam podići ovaj auto i maknuti ga sa strane.
You don't stand there and say, okay, once my muscles go, then I'll do it.
I sad ti ne stojiš tu ispred toga i kao, kad moji mišići malo narastu, ja ću to onda napraviti.
No, you say, it is my duty to do this.
Ti kažeš, ovo moja dužnost je napraviti to.
I must do this to be obedient.
Ja moram to napraviti da bi bio poslušan.
So you try, you lift, and you know you do what you can.
I ti naravno pokušaš to podići i vidiš da ne možeš, da ne ide.
And you find that it happens anyway, without even, Jesus is there too.
I vidiš da se to jednostavno dogodi nekako, jer je Isus tu.
But he doesn't act until you are starting to act.
Ali on ne počinje djelovati dok ti ne kreneš djelovati.
So when we're in conflict with other people,
I kada smo u sukobu sa drugim ljudima,
and it can be so frustrating.
Može biti jako frustrirajuće.
And you see in your heart that you're is not that they're just, they don't fully understand. They don't understand you.
I ti vidiš u svom srcu jednostavno trudiš, a vidiš da oni te jednostavno ne razumiju te ti ljudi.
But you remember, you can look at this and remember, okay, well it does say that real wisdom is gentle and reasonable and gets along with other people.
Ali može se pročitati i sjetiti se da kaže da prava mudrost je čista, mironosna i puna milosrđa i da se jednostavno slaže sa drugim ljudima.
You can say, I'm just going to say those kind words anyway.
Možeš reći, ok, ja ću ipak reći te ljubazne riječi.
I'm going to say, yes, I will accept you. I will live in good connection with you.
Ipak unatoč svemu možeš reći, ok, ja ću tebe prihvatiti i živjet ću, imat ću jedan dobar odnos sa tobom.
I will forgive you and I will not hold things against you.
Oprostit ću ti, neću zadržavati stvari protiv tebe.
Even though when you're saying it, you may think, how on earth could I do this?
I čak dok to govoriš, ako misliš, pa kako ću ja uopće to napraviti?
Well, the next time you meet this person, you're going to have to trust Jesus again.
I sljedeći put kad sretneš tu osobu, jednostavno treba ćeš imati povjerenje u Krista.
And that's okay.
I to je u redu.
That's the way it should be.
To je onako kako bi trebalo biti.
We can often think unconsciously.
Mi često možemo nesvjesno pomisliti
that Christianity is about learning enough stuff and getting strong enough so that you don't need God anymore.
Da je kršćanstvo u biti da naučiš što više stvari iz Biblije i da ojačaš toliko da ti Bog više nije potrebno.
Because we look at other Christians that are more mature than us and more knowledgeable.
Jer vidimo druge kršćane koji su zreliji od nas i koji imaju više znanja od nas.
And it looks like this comes from him or herself.
I izgleda nam da to kao dolazi od njih samih.
We don't see that the reason why this lady can be so peaceful in her life. My aunt, who had a horrendous marriage and just was a peaceful person.
Ne vidimo razlog zašto ti ljudi mogu biti tako blagi i puni mira koji dolazi od Boga. Tipa njegova ujna, ona ima užasan brak, ali ona ima takav mir, da je to nevjerojatno.
It's my great aunt I'm talking about. People if you see this will think I'm talking about some other aunt. No, a great aunt of mine had a terrible marriage.
Ujna neka njegova imala je užasan brak.
And she was at peace not because she's a peaceful person, but because she was connected to Jesus.
I ona imala mir u svemu tome jer je ona mirna sama po sebi. Bila je u odnosu sa Kristom.
Okay. So, what we should do when we see in us jealousy and ambition.
Šta trebamo činiti kad vidimo u sebi tu ljubomoru i neku ambiciju koja nije dobra?
That we should recognize that comes from a self-centered perspective.
Trebamo prepoznati da to dolazi od naše sebičnosti.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that that is always wrong.
I to ne znači da je to uvijek pogrešno.
What I mean is, it is not that your desires that you want to see fulfilled are illegitimate.
Ne kažem to da te želje koje ti želiš da se ispune nisu nekad legitimne.
Yeah, it could be they're very legitimate.
Mogu biti vrlo legitimne tvoje želje koje imaš.
It's just that your thoughts are circling around yourself.
Samo što radi se o tome da tvoje misli kruže non stop oko tebe samo.
My needs.
Moje potrebe.
And not somebody else's needs.
A ne potrebe nekog drugog.
I have this memory, and it's not exact enough. But I have a memory.
Imam jedno sjećanje, nije baš potpuno, ali se sjećam.
It was a person I know had to travel somewhere.
Osoba koju znam trebala je putovati negdje.
And the family that was going to bring them had this is what I don't remember. They had something happen to the family.
I nešto se to dogodilo u toj porodici.
Like their child was hit by a car.
Kao da
the family that was going to drive this lady somewhere.
Obitelj koja je trebala voziti tu ženu negdje, nešto je se dogodilo, njihovo dijete je udario neki auto.
I mean, it's very serious.
Jako ozbiljna stvar se dogodila.
And this lady's first reaction was, who's going to bring me to it?
I prva reakcija te gospođe je bila, ko će me odvesti tamo?
Yeah, because now that by itself was actually a legitimate question.
I da ti misliš o sebi, to je legitimna stvar.
But you see how there's something wrong with her self-centeredness of her thinking.
Ali vidite kako postoji nešto što nije u redu, jer ona je previše egocentrična, misli previše o sebi.
Yeah, this other family is greatly in need now.
Ta druga obitelj je bila u jako velikoj potrebi u tom momentu.
So there's something wrong with her heart.
I vidi se da nešto nije bilo u redu s njenim srcem.
When I was younger, my struggle would be often about food.
Dok sam bio mlađi, ja sam jako često imao borbu sa hranom.
Like we would have a zajednički ručak at church.
Imali bi zajednički ručak u crkvi.
And a bunch of people show up. We have a bunch of guests show up.
Imali bi puno gostiju koji bi se pojavili.
That should make me happy.
I to bi me trebalo učiniti sretnim.
But when I was a teenager, into my 20s even.
Kad sam bio tinejdžer, čak i u mojim 20-ima.
I would think, that's less food for me.
Ja sam mislio, manje hrane za mene.
It was never true. It was never true though.
I to nikad nije bilo istina, to sam
I was always full.
Uvijek sam bio puno.
But it shows that there's something wrong in my heart, right?
Ali pokazivalo da nešto nije u redu s mojim srcem.
Okay, so when we see that we have this in our heart, that we are focused on self. I
kad prepoznamo, kad vidimo to u svom srcu da smo fokusirani previše sami na sebe.
There's some specific things we can do.
Postoje baš specifične stvari koje možemo napraviti.
One is pay attention to what you are thinking about.
Jedna stvar je da obratiš pažnju na to o čemu misliš, o čemu razmišljaš.
Not just in that moment when there's conflict.
Ne samo u tom momentu kada postoji taj konflikt.
But what you're thinking about hour by hour.
Već šta razmišljaš sat po sat.
Because naturally you will think about yourself and things that interest you regularly through life.
Jer prirodno je da razmišljaš o sebi i o stvarima koje tebe zanimaju kroz život.
We need to move our thoughts onto things that are good and pure and clean and things of the Lord.
I mi moramo sa tog fokusa prebaciti se na one stvari koje su dobre ispred Gospoda, koje su čiste i ispravne.
That is the most important decision you ever make.
I to je najbitnija odluka koju ćeš donijeti.
And this is, I say that completely literally, truly.
I kažem to potpuno istinito, to je iskreno.
What will I think about right now?
Šta je ono o čemu ja mislim sada?
The most important decision you make in your entire life. It sets the whole course of your life.
To je najbitnija odluka koju možeš donijeti i ona jednostavno ona će odrediti cijeli kurs tvojeg življenja.
And so, when you see that you have angry, jealous thoughts,
i kad vidiš da imaš ljutite ili ljubomorne misli,
name them.
Imenuj ih.
Say, this is anger and jealousy.
Reci, ovo je bijes i ovo je ljubomora.
Okay, this is another thing that happened to me this week.
Ovo je druga stvar koja mi se dogodila ovog tjedna.
Just in case you were under the illusion still that I'm like a perfect saint.
Samo ako ste još uvijek imate neku iluziju o meni da sam ja savršen.
I had to drive to Zagreb.
Trebao sam voziti za Zagreb.
And my GPS said there's a bunch of traffic at the Zagreb interchange.
Moj GPS mi pokazao da je puno prometa tamo ispred Zagreba,
But if you get off early, you can save 10 minutes on your trip.
Ali ako skreneš sa tog puta koji imamo ekskursa ranije, možeš uštediti 10 minuta putovanja.
And I was driving up and I was like, well, I'll pull in behind this truck and then I'll get over, a couple hundred meters early for the thing and okay.
I vozio sam i rekao sam iću iza ovog kamiona da ću sebi uštediti malo vremena i puta.
Well, that truck also had a GPS.
A taj kamion isto imao GPS.
And he got off at that exit too.
I on isto izašao na tom izlazu.
And he proceeded to drive at 40 kilometers an hour the entire way.
I onda je vozio 40 na sat cijelim putem, a ja sam iza njega.
He had a kilometer-long line of traffic stuck behind him.
I iza sebe imao kilometar dugu
And right in front behind him was another car who clearly had no intention of trying to pass him.
I iza tog kamiona je vozio na auto koji uopće nije imao namjeru obići taj kamion.
Which means it's impossible for anybody else to pass.
I to bi značilo da je nemoguće bilo za ikog drugog.
And I was getting so angry.
I ja sam bio tako ljut.
And something in me was saying, why are you angry about this?
I nešto meni je govorilo, dobro, zašto si ljut zbog ovoga?
Jesus has all the authority.
Isus ima svu vlast.
You're going to arrive exactly at the right time.
Stićeš u pravi moment.
It is possible you could arrive too early.
Možda je moguće bilo da bi stigao prerano tamo.
This could save your life from a car accident.
A ovo ti možda spašava život od prometne nesreće.
And I didn't want to. I kept putting it away.
Ja sam to potiskivao, te misli koje su.
And I recognized I had to say out loud, I am enjoying being angry.
I morao sam reći naglas, pa ja uživam da budem ljut.
I had to say it out loud. I had to start saying out loud, I reject this. I will not do this.
I rekao sam naglas, ja ovo odbijam, ne želim ovo.
Yeah, I had to choose to be at peace. To say, okay, I am going to be at peace. I'm going to not be angry at this driver.
Trebao sam izabrati biti u miru i reći, ok, želim biti u miru i ne želim biti ljut na ovog vozača.
And that was how the Lord helped me do that.
I to je način na koji mi je Bog pomogao kroz tu situaciju.
And you can also try to imagine that, here's another thing, when you're upset, try to imagine you're the other person and see things from their perspective.
I isto tako druga stvar, kad ste uznemireni radi nečega, promislite na tu neku drugu osobu i pogledajte stvari iz njene perspektive, kako ona vidi situaciju.
And I try to remember, I have a friend who's a professional truck driver.
I imam prijatelja koji je profesionalni vozač kamiona.
And him talking about how much a 10-minute difference in his arrival can mean.
I on pričao mu je kako 10 minuta razlike u njegovom dolasku, koliko mu znači to.
And that truck has as much right to be on the road as I do.
I taj kamion isto tako ima svo pravo biti na tom putu kao i ja.
That helped me have peace.
I to mi je pomoglo da budem u miru, jer imam mir.
And so then you can choose to think about things that are good.
I onda možeš birati o stvarima koje su dobre. Da misliš o stvarima koje su dobre.
Because when we don't do that, this is verse 15, it says, it's earthly, natural, and demonic wisdom.
Jer kad ne razmišljaš na takav jedan način, ovdje u 15 stihu nam kaže da je to nije mudrost koja odozgo silazi, nego zemaljska, naravna i demonska, ili zloduška.
Yeah, that's the world, the flesh, and the devil.
Znači to je svijet, tijelo i neprijatelj, đavo.
That's where the jealous and selfish impulses in us, they come from.
To je odakle ljubomora i ti sebični impulsi dolaze na život.
So remember, if we want to have the peaceful fruit of righteousness,
ako želimo imati milosrdne, dobre plodove,
verse 18, you have to be a person of peace.
Stih 18 kaže da trebamo biti osoba, mirotvorac, osoba od mira,
That is the kind of soil that peaceful fruit of righteousness grows in.
Plod se pak pravednosti u miru sije onima koji tvore mir.
So, all of us,
svi mi,
are going to be dealing with this.
Ćemo se nositi s ovim stvarima.
Amen.
Amen.